Every day, traders and investors dive in to tackle the ever-changing markets to find opportunity. Futures Radio Show is your number one source for answers to the questions that all market participants want to ask. Veteran futures trader Anthony Crudele sits down with the most influential leaders and top traders in the industry. Now, here's your host, Anthony Crudele.
What's up, everybody? Anthony Crudele here, and thank you for tuning in for this episode with Ed Latimore. Futures Radio Show is sponsored by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world effectively manage risk. For access to free educational tools and resources for the active individual trader, please visit activetrader.cmegroup.com. Remember, everybody, new shows are posted on Mondays and Thursdays. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a review on iTunes. This show is also sponsored by Trading Technologies, Footsie Russell, and RJO Futures. To learn about some great offers that these sponsors have for our listeners, please visit futuresradioshow.com/sponsors. Today I spoke with ex-heavyweight boxer, Amazon best-selling author, influencer, and all-around awesome guy, Ed Latimore. In today's podcast, I chatted with Ed about street smarts, dealing with emotions, maintaining discipline, and last but not least, developing personal edge. So without further ado, let me take you right to the interview with Ed. Ed, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I was really surprised / flattered when I got the email that I guess by popular demand or something to that effect that I'm brought back on the show.
FinTwit loves you, man. They do.
which I'm always amazed by the people who become fans of my stuff and what I put out, because I never do anything with an intention to attract a certain audience. I really am fortunate that I get to be an artist in that I just get to create, and enough people and really enjoy what I create. And I guess FinTwit is one of them. Yeah,
I think that there are several reasons why we as traders, FinTwit as we call it, really connect well with you. It's your positivity, your energy, and really your commitment to maintaining discipline. And I think that for so many traders, we talk about discipline all the time. Hearing from someone like yourself, who's a former heavyweight boxer, and how much you talk about dealing with emotion and maintaining discipline is something that really connects with us. But we're going to get into all of that today. First off, last time we spoke, you were talking about moving to Portugal. I know you made the move at the end of last year. How's everything going?
I really enjoy it here, man. But this is like, I think I talked about this in the show last time, but if I didn't, a quick update in general about my life. I grew up with no such opportunities as this. There was no traveling, there was no study abroad, and this is, I turned 35 here. At the age of 35, I get to finally do a thing like this, and I really put myself in a position to do this, and it's been really great. So that in general, that whole feeling of, okay, a milestone that I was able to make happen, that's really a really good feeling. But the other things about being here, it's really great. I mean, the only thing, when I first got here, I didn't miss anything about America, and I still don't really miss anything about America. What I do miss is I do kind of miss just being able to interact with my friends or see them, and I guess that's natural. I would not be a human if I didn't have that feeling. So, but otherwise, man, I really, I've got a really great girl, man, and we do tons of things together. Fortunately, we like one another. Plus, we've had the fortune of not having to be in the same room or anything. So, we won't see each other for 4 to 6 hours a day, usually on average, because we work in different areas, and then we get together and like go out to lunch or go out to dinner or go for a walk or something. And it's cool. And in doing so, we discover more parts of the city. There's always something to learn here because it's we love museums. I love museums. I love studying that kind of thing. And if there's not museums, there's a lot of music, and then even still, with the way I eat and as disciplined as I am with my diet, because the food here is of such a quality, I get to eat quite a bit, but I'm still not eating a lot, because I go, I eat, and then once I finish eating, I usually have to walk uphill and both ways to get wherever I'm going, because this is quite a hilly place, both Porto where I'm at now and Lisbon where I was for 3 months. So I really enjoy being here. I hate to perpetuate this idea, but like anyone thinking about traveling, at least to Portugal, you could probably get by with just English, though your experience will be far less enriching than if you go and put together at least a rudimentary level of Portuguese to communicate, like in restaurants, and show that, like, you're not just another British or American tourist.
Cool, man. Well, I'm very happy for you. And I'm just curious, what was the reason that you decided to move to Portugal?
Um, you know, I've always wanted to try it. I mean, if you want to, like I thought about this because there was no reason, like there was no pressing urge, like while my girlfriend's family and everything is from Portugal, it's not like she was like, oh, we got to go back or something. This was all very much my idea, and it was just a thing I wanted to do and try. And say that I've done that, to say I've lived overseas and got to experience and see something other than the United States, and it was a stressful. But like to say it was super easy. It was not like prohibitively stressful. Like there were points where it was like, oh my god, I don't know if I'll be able to do this. But there was stress involved making the move. Fortunately, none of that stress was financial because I went and took care of my life in such a way. But there are other stresses like getting things together and managing another person's emotions as they're dealing with a stressful thing that she's just along for the ride for the most part. Even if you want to look at it in terms of like idea versus following, so I have to be aware of that and work on that. And but I came here because it was a good hub point, as good a place as any to go check out and be I guess be an expat temporarily. I don't know if this will be a permanent thing. I'm not really not sure. I'm built to be a permanent expat, but definitely 3 to 6 months out of the year leaving the country is not a bad idea, especially when I left it, because I live in the Northeast and it is it's winter right now, and it is
Yep.
so.
Yeah, I'm actually in Florida, so it's basically like our summer right now because our summer is
Oh
like
man.
the North's winter. And I want to move on. I want to talk about this new thing you've been talking about, and it's Stoic street smarts. You've been posting about this.
Oh yeah, it's really it's I guess it's a combination of kind of how I see myself seeing the world, or how I see the world, and kind of what tools help me navigate growing up, and continuing as an adult would help me to get control over particular problems or issues that I encountered. Some of them, self-inflicted, and others not so much. And it really has always been this ability, a twofold ability: one, to assess the situation, to see the players and see what they're trying to do, what their motives are, and then kind of align myself to be in the right place at the right time. Almost a Machiavellian type of idea, and that's the street smarts there. But then there's the stoicism, and that's my ability to kind of step back and not take anything in this game of life personally. Just to realize, we're all just players in the game, and really, you make the best moves. And I mean, ideally, you make the best moves with a sense of ethics, but you have to. I think it's all of our responsibility to not assume that the other players will play the game as ethically as you will. So you have to make sure you defend yourself, and that's kind of where the street smarts idea comes from. But I was thinking, I was like, okay, what best sums up the way I see the world and the way I move through it, and that Stoic street smarts idea just kept coming back to me, because that combination of things, I think, can get a person through certainly many of the natural kind of things that we are challenged by when we can't control where we're born. For example, we can't control, our abilities and what we're good at and what we're bad at, but we can make the most of it. And part of making the most of that is to just be able to look at yourself and look at your situation and go, okay, this is that, and not get angry about it, not get bitter about it, but come up with a plan, come up with a strategy, come up with a way to maximize your living situation. And I don't think there are, and I won't say there are no, so I'll say I don't think there are very many or are many people at all who are completely hopeless. I think we all have a way to be someone or to make something worthwhile out of our lives, but that requires looking at where we're inadequate, looking at where we're weak and going, okay, I can't do this, I can't do that, but I can do this, I can do that. Let me go focus on that. Let me go, play to my strengths, and that's where that idea comes from, the objective lens, and then playing the game correctly.
Hearing you talk about street smarts really resonates with me because I went straight from high school to the trading floors. Not straight to it. There's kind of a long story in between there. I'm not going to get into that today, but once I did get there, all I brought with me really was street smarts because I didn't have a college education.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, no, I never went. And I figured out the business. It took me obviously a lot of time, and I had some great mentors and some great friends to help me along the way, but self-motivated, self-driven. And it really came down to, I could figure things out. I wasn't a book smart person in school, but I figured things out, right? And when I got to the trading floors, I figured it out. It took a long time, but it really just came down to me having a vision. And to be honest with you, just working my ass off to really get what I wanted.
I think a lot of people would use that idea that, like, okay, I didn't go to college, therefore I am going to be limited. And I think a lot of people would use that idea. Maybe excuse is too strong and accusatory of a word, but certainly as a way to explain any inadequacy in their life rather than, looking at it and going, okay, this is the path I've chosen, and there are some things that have been closed off, but how can I, take advantage of what is still open to me, where I can move, where I can make moves. And I think about this because I think in many ways, the way I ended up going back to college, because I went back to college and finished college at the age of 33, no less. But one of the reasons I went back is because I think I had that limiting mentality. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I can't get any jobs. Instead of, probably pushing a little harder and working a little harder and perhaps taking the lesson that you just gave, which is, hey, and the lesson that I've since learned and internalized even more, which is, hey, you make the best of your situation. And not only do you make the best of it, I mean, you really, from what I understand of trading, and certainly one, for a trader to have your reputation and prestige, you certainly have been successful. So have you been any more or less successful than someone with a college degree? The numbers say by far you certainly have been more, and that's what happened. You got to see another door that opened, and I think that's really the crux of the situation. It's the same idea like why I started boxing. I was like, oh man, I need to put sweat equity in somewhere and do something. And boxing made the most sense to me at the time. It's not like I was going, oh man, I get all this rage, let me get in here and bust some heads. It was like, no, it wasn't. Well, it's not that the story's not like that. The story very much is, I felt like a loser and a lame, and I needed to start putting some sweat equity in somewhere, and this was a way for me to do it. I didn't have enough money to go back to school, so I guess in some ways, that I ended up going to school way after I started boxing. But when I said, okay, where am I going to get my sweat equity? Where am I going to start leaving a mark to show the world that I like exist, and time will pass and people can look and go, oh, he did something. So, okay, I don't have enough money to go back to school. I don't want to enlist in the military. At this point in time, I didn't think I had any type of ability with sales or any numerical talent for school. So I said, you know what I can do? I can be tough, and let me see how long I can, go banging some heads. And it worked out pretty well. But I guess in that regard, there's the same mentality.
Hey everybody, a quick pause here to talk about Footsie Russell. They are a leading global provider of benchmarks, analytics, and data solutions. The Russell 2000 Index is a key benchmark for small cap U.S. stocks. Be sure to check out the E-Mini Russell 2000 Index Futures Contract, symbol RTY. For more information on Footsie Russell and their products, please visit FootsieRussell.com. Well, I went through a lot of your posts and I picked some of the favorite things, my favorite things that you have talked about. And I said that trading is a journey of oneself. And I can relate to so many of the posts that you put out there. And one of the posts that you recently put out, and I loved it, it was how to forgive yourself and let the past go. Because I think that traders struggle with this. I know that I did. I internalized everything. I'm such a competitor and blame myself for everything. You want to do good, and when you're not doing good, you put a lot of weight on yourself, a lot of blame on yourself, and it's hard to let that go. Talk to us about that post of you teaching people how to forgive themselves and letting the past go.
Forgiveness is a really important thing to me. I think it is. Well, first, before I talk about what I think, let me talk about my experience with it. It has single-handedly been responsible, I think, for the relationship that I have, like with my mother, because I had to do a lot of forgiving there, and the relationship I have with myself, particularly looking at and reconciling some of the behavior that I engaged in while I was under the influence of alcohol and things of that nature. And I was like, okay, I need to move past these things. I need to live. I can't constantly beat myself up. I can't constantly feel angry when I think about my life coming up and the things that I became more aware of as I got older. So I said, what can I do? And I stumbled upon this book quite by accident in the bookstore about, at this point, one of my favorite, almost 20 years ago, called A Course in Miracles. And The Course in Miracles, the entire premise is forgiveness is kind of the way to love, and forgiveness will take you to peace and all that kind of stuff. Well, I read that a few times, and I really internalized and started practicing this idea of like willful forgiveness. I didn't want to just wait for time to wash things away, because one thing I've always recognized, and perhaps this is genetic, or maybe someone slipped a book of Stoic ideas to me when I was a child and I don't remember. One thing I always recognized is that you need to have a clear emotional you need to have a clear emotional temperament. Your mind needs to be clear, because the more emotionally volatile you are, the more likely it is you'll make mistakes. And when you make those mistakes, you're going to have to deal with those consequences, or you're going to have to deal with like the consequences of those mistakes far after your emotional state is stabilized. In other words, you don't want to do something with permanent repercussions in a temporary mindset. And so I've always been a big fan of keeping a cool head and trying to keep a cool head. But I could not think my way through certain emotional issues. And for that, forgiveness was necessary. And forgiveness, the whole idea is, to give up before you're ready to. I think a lot of times we hold these grudges against ourselves, and we can't let go of the past because we want the books to be balanced, so to speak. When people seek revenge, when people feel guilt, that is a way to go, okay, something can happen that will make what happened in the past even. You took something from me, you're going to give me something back, or I took something from the world, I got to give something back now, when it's internally directed to guilt portion. But what forgiveness makes you go, okay, I'm going to cancel this debt. And when you cancel that debt, then the ledger is clear, and then you can start working on the other things that ledger was keeping you from handling. That's a lot of energy. If you have a grudge against someone, well, what is that all saying? Having a grudge against someone is like swallowing poison and expecting them to die because they don't know, they don't feel anything. You're the one that carries that poison, and I believe that it is probably more natural to feel that way than it is to not. So you have to come up with some type of strategy, some type of tool to overcome this state, because otherwise your emotional attachment to hurt and your obsession with trying to effectively reverse the past, to undo what happened, will destroy you. You can't think clearly, and I didn't want to destroy myself. It's the same idea behind why I stopped drinking, is because once I recognized the behavior or a trait in myself that was going to lead to me ultimately ruining myself, I said, okay, I need to do something about this. I need to take action. That's the thinking part. My thinking led me to forgiveness, which is an entirely emotional process.
Okay, so for me personally, I was always able to, in the short term, I felt I was a very good healer. Like I'd have a losing trade and I was able to move on right away. But over time, as I struggled, I internalized all of the mistakes I had made. It's like I felt in the short term I was getting over it, but over time, I started to develop anxiety, and eventually I had a heart attack. I don't know if you and I ever talked about this, but I had a heart attack at 36 years old standing at my desk. And
I remember you told me about that.
And that was from, to me, not really forgiving myself in some ways. It was just internalizing everything. I took a lot. It took me a lot of years to turn the corner. And then I thought that even dealing with success was just as hard or even harder. I wasn't really ready to deal with success. So that had given me a lot of challenges as well. And along the way, the mistakes I had made, all these things, they just kind of built up inside me. And I had this just a ton of stress inside me. And I think it was because I wasn't able to forgive myself for a lot of the mistakes I had made. And you retweeted a tweet the other day that really struck a chord with me. And it was, I'm going to read it. You may be able to tune out your conscious mind, but your subconscious is always paying attention. That's why it's so important to rid yourself of toxic people and circumstances that infect your mind. So I remember suffering from anxiety, which to this day I've been able to really put it off. I still get it in some moments where I would just get, lightheaded, and I never passed out or anything, but I would have like these Tony Soprano moments. And what was interesting was I was actually talking with Denise Scholl about this, and I had said, I never got it when I was at my trading screens. That was like my church, right? I'd be at my screens doing my job, or, when I was out even working out or focused doing something, I never got it. But when I would just be sitting around watching TV, all of a sudden I'd be like, oh my God, I'm having an anxiety attack. And I'm going, why is this? And it's exactly what she was talking about. She says, your subconscious is always working.
Oh man, ain't that the truth? Like that actually reminds me of this is such a great book. I need to reread it and take some notes. So there's this great book called The Epidemic of Absence, and it's about the leading ideas for like dealing for like allergies. Like why are we allergic to food, right? And the main idea, the one that we think is going to explain it and everything together, is that our immune system evolved in a very dirty environment. And now we're in a very clean environment relative to what we spent most of our time in as evolving humans. And you would think that the immune system would calibrate itself to this clean environment. But instead, what the immune system seems to have done is it's gone, there are no pathogens around. So let me attack something that looks kind of like a pathogen. And it turns out that a lot of things, those common food allergies, the proteins look very similar to pathogens, and the immune system is, let me attack that instead, right? Like, we found out, for example, that or I guess the author did this. He went and infected himself with tapeworm, and in doing so, he tapered down his body's reaction to other allergens that he was having, because now it had something to focus on that was much more like the environment that it was used to. So, drawing the analogy to that, I think, okay, you remove that thing you're stressed about, right? You're not at your desk, and then you go to some other place and it's always work and always eating away, but there's nothing to attack. So it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna make him feel like we're gonna attack something. We have to do something. It's too calm right now.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? And I was taught that lesson through reality, right? These are some of the things that you don't necessarily believe until they happen to you. And I want to move on and talk about something that, we as traders, we talk about how, well, a lot of people say, you shouldn't trade with emotion. And I've talked about this so much on the show. I say that's impossible because emotion is part of us as human beings. So no matter what you're doing, there's always going to be emotion involved. So it's really just a matter of dealing with emotion. And you talk a lot about this. Talk to us about you as an athlete, you as a person, and how you've been able to deal with emotion.
I've really learned to distance myself or be detached, so to speak. And it's one thing to say it; it's a totally different thing to do it. But in doing it, I have learned that I'm not necessarily my emotional state. And I've learned to kind of distrust my emotions, believe it or not. Like I know, for example, we can look at this in different ways. I know that the same emotion, that my reaction to something that makes me angry is probably not a real threat. Something that makes me nervous, I know that the odds of that coming true are not real. Or on the flip side, if some pretty girl makes my heart race, I know I'm just looking at her and it's not a real thing. So I've really learned to kind of be skeptical of how I feel, not because how I feel is dishonest, but because I understand that not everything needs a reaction. And that's where you get in trouble with your emotions. You're like, we'll never be able to stop feeling. That doesn't go away. What we can do is stop reacting without thinking. And because some things demand a reaction, right? I don't think there's a thing that demands a mindless reaction. But there's always some, your emotions have a reason. You got to look at them and go, okay, is this something that I pay attention to? Is this something that is just springing up in the moment? You really have to learn, or I've learned anyway, to think through the emotion. Because one thing I had to learn is how I got over my fear of lightning. I used to be deathly afraid of lightning, almost as much as I used to be afraid of dogs. And I used to be afraid of dogs because when I was like 2 years old, we got attacked by a pack of Dobermans. It's crazy, man. And when I was even older, I don't remember where the fear of lightning came from, but that stuck with me forever. But I don't remember exactly like when I made the switch for dogs, but I remember very clearly when I made the switch for lightning. And it was, I knew the stats, like the odds of me being struck were I think I have a better odds of getting in a plane crash or something to that effect. They're super high, right? But it's one thing to know the odds, and it's a totally different thing to like function in spite of what like, because if people paid attention to the odds, no one will be afraid of flying. Everyone will be freaking out when they get in their car. But it's like just the opposite. And for me, I had to, when I went to basic training, and there was so much marching, and I had to march with such discipline and sleep outside during these thunderstorms in the middle of the country. And I was just like, oh, I'm still alive. Nothing's happening. It's just like you see that I saw that my fear was irrational. Now that doesn't mean lightning's not dangerous. It just means the odds of being struck by it are so small. The EV of it is like of infinitely negative, right? If it happens, it happens. But one of the factors is super small, which is like the odds of it occurring. And when you experience that, when you experience exposure to these things, and you realize, okay, it's not that bad, then you can apply that same bit of reasoning to the rest of your emotions, to the rest of the other things you see, both positive and negative. You realize that not everything is to be, just because you feel happy doesn't mean you need to go running off and tell everyone why you're happy, for example. You learn quickly with some feedback that perhaps it generates jealousy or whatever. And then you can sit and question. I never tell people to try and eliminate how they feel, to cut that out, only to not make your decisions based on it. And that requires that small little interrupt, getting right in between where you feel and when you do. So I think low vibration people without discipline, they don't have that interrupt. And so their lives are as turbulent as our emotional states. But I think the successful people, they're able to get an interrupt. They have a turbulent of an emotional state as any other human, but they're able to get in the middle of things and stop and think, and then decide how to react. And that's what I try to tell people, and that's what I do for myself.
Do you ever use an emotion that's coming upon you as maybe an advantage, as an asset? And let me give you a quick example. The example I for me is public speaking, right? I do it, and every time before I get up there, you get nervous. I don't care who you are, right? You see a big crowd of people you have to speak to. I use that energy to get me more focused. Another example would be I'm sitting at my screens. All of a sudden I get a really big position on. Maybe I'm a little bit over my skis. I feel, wow, I've got a lot going on here. I look at that and I use that to say, you know what? You're just got way too much going on. Trim this back. Thoughts on that?
Okay, right. So what you describe, I actually don't know what the word for it is. I just remember or the phrasing or what we call it. But I remember I was taught to do this as an amateur boxer. And like you said, public speaking, just the same as getting in a ring, fighting with another man, and the other guy in there as a ref, and everyone's looking. Everyone is nervous leading up to that. So what you have to do, or rather what I learned earlier, and I think we all learned to some degree as fighters, is fighting that feeling is exhausting. Like, you won't be able to sleep the night before the fight, which is going to in turn affect your performance, and you're not going to be able to concentrate. You're going to be and then you'll be all jacked up and full of nerves. What's much better to do is to really lean into it and be excited. This took me a little while because I'm naturally a calm guy, and I don't like to give the appearance of being emotionally perturbed or excited. But I've learned just to run with it. If I'm excited about a fight or was nervous about it, I eventually learned to show that and use this excitement to charge my training up, everything. If you can learn to lean into these things, these nervous states, these fearful states, because really, what are they telling you, right? Like, your emotions are always a source of feedback. And I don't know if this is accurate or not. I just know that what I'm about to say is how I've chosen to interpret these situations, and so that gives me the advantage. And I choose to interpret anxiety. I choose to interpret nervousness as my body or my soul or whatever you want to call it, telling me that there is something very important on the horizon, and I need to continue to prepare. I need to be ready, and I know that it gives me. We know this biochemically that the same hormones that give you those feelings of nervousness and anxiety, they do give you a bit of an energy boost and a concentration boost. So I think about that and I go, well, I have this advantage, and in these feelings, I know that if I continue to lean into it, I can ride that wave as opposed to being drowned by it. Let me go with it. And so whenever I feel nervous about a thing, that just lets me know that I need to be prepared and I need to continue to be aware. If I do that, I really, the best things tend to work out or tend to happen.
I love that, man. I do the same thing. Hey, everybody, I want to take a quick pause and talk about RJO Futures. They are a long-standing brokerage firm with personal broker relationships to learn, discuss, and trade the futures markets. To learn more about RJO Futures, please visit rjofutures.com. A couple more things before we get into rapid fire. Maintaining discipline. I mean, you talk about discipline all the time. And gotten to know you a little bit, been following you for years. You have a great ability, obviously, as a professional athlete and beyond now in what you're doing with your blogging and influencing people, is you are able to maintain discipline. Talk to us about how you're able to do that.
Oh, I remember that I'm here for, let's make it even more meta than just the blog game for everything. I have a purpose and I have a goal, right? And anything that gets in the way of that goal is, by definition, a distraction, if not downright superfluous. And I try to eliminate all extraneous, all superfluous things from my daily activities, so I can get done what I feel is important to get done. That doesn't guarantee that I've made the correct decision in determining the order of importance of activities, but it does mean that I'm trying to move towards a thing with purpose, and that tends to work out better than just winging it. And so when I do that, whether I have my goals for my physique and how I want to look and how I want to feel, and I have no problem touching the dark side when it comes to that. And I always talk about the idea of touching the dark side, which is, you have to understand, why are you doing something like I'm not competing in athletics anymore realistically for the rest of my life, but I continue to go to the gym kind of like I do because I would like to look like I compete in athletics. That's a certain bit of vanity for me, and I greatly enjoy that, right? And you got to lean into it. There's no shame in that. And then I can use that. I can take that insecurity, and then I can funnel that through a disciplined plan. Okay, that I can eat that. That's cool. I cannot eat it. That's cool. All right, I got to get to the gym. I gotta stay on top of my calories. I really make myself excited about what I want to do. And then from there, it's very easy to think back through, okay, how do I make sure I get to the goal? And you know what the great thing about the great thing about everything I've endured in my life, and I think the three big successes I would consider so far in my fighting career, getting my degree in physics despite failing math in high school, and the success and I guess SEO ranking on my blog and everything. Well, these three things have reinforced the idea to me that all things worthwhile take time. They take hard work and time, and to not expect an instant result. And I think one thing that ruins a lot of people's discipline is they expect an instant result. When it doesn't happen quickly, they're ready to give up. So like, could you imagine, taking that approach to anything? Oh, I wanna, lose 10 pounds. It didn't happen in the first 10 days. It's time to go back to eating trash, right? And I really think a lot of people move that way. I don't think it's they lack the desire; they lack the patience that said desire requires. We want the thing now, and when it doesn't happen now, the irony is our impatience guarantees we're never going to get it. So I've really learned to be patient and not expect things to come quickly. And in doing so, or I do it also with the with the intent of working towards the goal, or rather working towards the goal, and getting in touch with whatever my real reasons are, not the good reason. Because if someone asked me, why do you work out so hard, I could tell them a good reason. Oh, I want to be healthy. I'm getting and let's not make it all about vanity. I'm 35, and I fully recognize that at this point now, I still have time working with me a little bit, but in 3 years, probably not so much. At that point, I'll be fighting, or at least even with nature. So I need to continue to make sure I eat well and sleep well and train well, so my body doesn't deteriorate. So so that when I'm 45, people don't go, "Oh, that guy must be 50." I want them to continue to look at me and go, "Okay, he might be 35." Make that kind of mistake. So that kind of thing. And the same way with finances. I recognize that I wanted to live a lifestyle where I could go out. I was talking to my girlfriend about this last night. I know dinner cost something last night, right? But I'm a long ways away from having to think about that I spent that money, or even concerning myself with the menu. And that's a really big deal to me, because we grew up very poor, and food was a very big deal. And so I was like, okay, how can I make sure I get into a position where I don't have to do this? Well, first, it requires not wasting money on other things. Then it requires a long-term vision, working towards something that's going to continue to kick back, and then continue to work. It really is just this patience, man. I think that's what, if I could give my secret to discipline, patience. And I don't think a lot of people think about how important that is really realizing that it's not going to happen quickly, and just being ready to put in a lot of hours.
I agree with you totally. And I think for traders, expectations get in the way of their process. I mean, I know for me, that's exactly what happened. You go into this business, you want to make money. Like you said, going back to I want to lose 10 pounds. Well, the minute you get this wrapped in your mind that you want to lose 10 pounds, you do things, and immediately you want to see those results. And when you don't, you get frustrated, and because you're not meeting your expectations early on, you divert back to what you were doing before. And this is so difficult to teach because for me, right, it's one of those things where I look back at my life, and when I thought so short term and wanted those results, and I was so hyper focused on I need to make money today, I needed to do this today, that I lost sight of why I was doing it. And when you think a little bit longer term, to me, shorter term results actually come quicker.
Yeah, almost by definition, They show up quickly, but like, I just wish people would realize that anything worth having takes effort and time. Otherwise no one would want it. Like,
yeah.
When you when a thing is scarce, it becomes more valuable. And so you have to look and go, okay, what is scarce that I can do? I was talking to my SEO guy, not my SEO guy, but one of the guys that I spent a lot of time learning from. And one thing has become really clear over the past, especially 6 months for me, and continue moving forward, my strategy for everything, what my writing and all, is that no one wants to put the time and energy and risk into learning and optimizing their website for search engines, because it takes time. It's not nearly as glamorous and as fast as building a Twitter following up and then trying to sell something to your Twitter following. But the thing is, when you do it that way, you always have to sell something to your Twitter following, and then you're dependent on Twitter, which is neither here nor there. It just it's something worth considering. But if you take the time to build a decent website, yeah, at first it's going to take a little while. But I look at some of the guys I look up to, and I try to emulate things they're doing, like Jordan Harbinger, James Clear, or James Oettinger, or Mark Manson. I mean, I look at these guys. They've been writing and blogging for a decade, and their website and mailing list alone dwarfs anything that I've seen. And I look at it and go, how could I ever, like part of me goes, how could I ever reach those numbers? And another part of goes, I have to reach those numbers because that makes the most sense. And if they did it, I can do it too, which is another thing too. I think really aids in discipline. It's kind of this little bit of arrogance you have to have about yourself. You have to look at it and go, okay, what is so special about these guys? Nothing. Okay, so if they did it, then not only can I do it, I can probably do it faster and better. Let me just learn from them, be humble, and work harder. And no one wants to. Once again, this is a very, I don't, like you said, I don't know how how do you teach patience? How do you teach the ability to believe in yourself? How do you get a person to go, okay, they did it and they're not special. How do I do it too? Or, can I do it? And I think that's very difficult, if not impossible, really, to teach without getting the other negative externalities that come with that type of perspective, which does tend to be a bit of an inflated sense of ego or arrogance. But what do they say? You can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, right? I mean, there's trade-offs to everything.
Yeah. It's funny when you're young, at least for me, you feel like you don't have a lot of time and you want results right away. And as time goes by and you get some experience in life, experiencing your business, you're okay with it taking a little bit longer and your results come quicker. And to me, that's how I ended up learning patience, is that, okay, when I finally realized I'm not going to get the results that I want right away, and I changed my tone, right? I changed my approach. I was in it for a longer haul. I wanted to be able to do something for a longer period of time. I had longer term goals and shorter term goals. And then things started to open up for me. When you get too focused on something happening right away, to me, you just lose sight of it. And
Yep.
a lot of what we talked about today is developing personal edge. And I talk about this with traders all the time. I'm like, look, you could learn the technicals and the fundamentals. They're the easy part. But to me, to make it in anything, right, specifically trading, and I think very similar, maybe even for a boxer, right? You could learn how to punch. You could learn how to block a punch. You could learn the techniques. But you need to have personal edge to be able to compete at a high level, right?
Yep.
It's not just X's and O's. So, Ed, give everybody some, let's just say, tips for developing personal edge.
Like I said, man, I'm such a big fan of one my idea the dark side. Know your real reason, not the good reason. Is it to be famous? They be like, oh, no one wants to be famous. Look, man, some people want to be famous, and there's nothing wrong with that. And don't let anyone shame you if that's what you want. Do you want to be rich? If you want to have a bunch of money and be rich, you may have no idea what that means, but if that's what you're chasing, chase it, right? That's part of it. And the other part is you have to be you have to spend. I mean, some people get lucky, I think. Others have to, they don't get so lucky in this regard and have to try a little longer. But you have to figure out what you're good at. And every person, I think, has something or some combination of qualities that gives them a unique edge that makes them nearly, I mean, you can't compete with them in this realm. You just have to spend too much time. You'd have to work twice as hard and get a tenth of the results that they get. And that is discouraging. And if you learn where your area is that other people have to work twice as hard, and still can't catch up with you, you're still leaving them behind. In fact, you're going to do great, and you marry that to like whatever your desire is, and you're chasing that combined with what I like to describe as a wicked will. Kind of that I'm going to get this any way I have to or how long it takes. Those three things, I think that gives you an edge because look, one thing that we discuss in fighting, for example, it is very all things considered equal. The person who is willing to die first is going to have the edge. And I put it that way to kind of frame it dramatically, but the idea is that it's very difficult to beat someone who will not be beaten, who will not sit down, who will not lay down, who will not quit. That to where they have to be removed, like they have to be killed or removed, like eliminated. You can't do anything about them. There'll always be a problem. If you have that kind of grit, you're going to be a very effective person in anything you try to do. Combine that with figuring out, your exact reason and that drives you. Combine that with figuring out where your unique edge is, where people cannot compete and they cannot do a thing with you, where their best day is quite literally one of your worst days in that same area. Those three things combined, that gives you an edge, and that's going to make you very difficult to beat, and it's going to bring you a lot of success. And more importantly, I think it's going to bring you success in an enjoyable way, the way you want it, not the way other people think you should be successful.
Ed, I'm loving this conversation, but we've got rapid fire questions next if you're ready for those.
All right, let's go.
All right, everybody, our rapid fire segment is sponsored by Trading Technologies. Trade the global markets with TT. They are the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform. Now with integrated tools for advanced options trading, cryptocurrencies, and trade surveillance. You can try it now for free at tryttnow.com. Ed, first question for you. Who has influenced your life the most and why?
The biggest influence, probably my coach, man. Like my boxing coach back home. I that was one of my first experiences, seeing someone conduct themselves in every way, shape, or form they preached and taught for boxing. And I said, I would like to be that kind of shining example, the guy that tells you, you have to work out, do this, do that. And he himself is working out and staying in shape and eating well and that kind of thing. I think my coach had a really big influence on how I look at and how I want to be seen. Like if there's anyone who's not a hypocrite, it's my coach. The guy who's like who tells you to go run this many miles or to eat this, and he eats it and does it himself. And you're like, man, you don't even compete. So if you think it's worthwhile, I need to do it too.
Favorite form of exercise?
I'm a big fan of the rowing machine. I really like the rowing machine and the heavy bag. Those are probably taught, and you know what else too? It's going to be like one of those things when I move back to the States and wherever I get a place to live, I'm going to get in the house. I'm going to get a Dance Revolution machine loaded up with all the songs. I don't know if you know what that is, but I'm a really big fan of DDR, great exercise, and I would love to get an arcade machine. So those three things: Dance Revolution, hitting the heavy bag, and the rowing machine.
Keto or paleo?
Paleo, man. Because at the end of the day, I really think you need carbohydrates, man. I don't think you need refined carbs. I think you need, good hearty vegetables and things like that. I think the breads and the sugar, I think we get way too much of that in our diet. Plus, I'm just not going to be that strict anymore. I don't think I ever was. At some like everyone has their limit, and part of being disciplined is realizing where your limit is. And I don't even eat that much garbage. I just think that the paleo diet is superior. Anything that eliminates an entire food group, whether it's positive and negative members of that group, eliminates an entire micronutrient. Yeah, that's not hot for me, man. I can't get behind that. So I'm with paleo. Now I've done keto before. I don't want to paint the picture that I'm just speaking on without experience. I used it twice to cut for a fight. I would never do it again though.
What is one attribute that you believe every athlete should have?
Grit. man. You grit, and grit is. I think I read this somewhere that grit is the ability to persist towards a goal in the face of negative feedback, like something bad happening, someone telling you ain't gonna, be anything, whatever, right? Because the world is impersonal. I really believe that. And so you're going to need to be focused on what you want and continue moving towards it, especially when there's all the evidence to the contrary. I think you need grit.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh man, I'm trying to think the single best piece of advice that I ever received. You know what? A friend of mine is really one of the reasons he talked to me about getting sober, man. He's like, if you take everything, he said if I was you, I would cut everything out of your life for 2 years, this nonsense, and just focus on boxing. And I took that and then I ran with it. Now 6 years has passed and I still haven't had a drink. And it really changed my life.
Best book you've read lately?
So I'm reading two right now. I'm reading On Killing by Lieutenant Dan Grossman, or Grossman, I think, and Thinking in Bets by Annie Grossman. By not Annie Grossman, Annie Duke, the poker player. And I really like both of them. I'll have to probably give the edge to On Killing right now because it really, really examines a thing that we thought we knew and understood, okay, men killing one another, and turns out, the humans are very resistant to killing, and we can learn quite a lot about our fellow men and how much we care for our species just intrinsically by reading this book.
Favorite vacation spot you visited?
So far my favorite place has been Quebec City in the winter, man. I know that's weird, but it's like a constant winter wonderland. The last time we were there, we landed, it was negative 16 degrees Fahrenheit, and it snowed the whole time. And we stayed in the Fairmont Hotel in the old city behind in the walled city. And it was like, we got up there on like January 2nd or 3rd, and it was still like Christmas. There was snow and it was dog sledding, and I love it. I love snow. I'm a really big fan of precipitation falling from the sky in general. But to have the snow was really cool. So if anyone gets a chance to check out a true winter wonderland, and it's beautiful in the spring, I hear too. I haven't been up there yet.
Last question for today. Since you just moved to Portugal, what's your favorite thing to do in Portugal?
Oh man, I really like taking walks, man. It's such a walkable city, or a walkable country in general. But the food, but besides taking walks, something more interesting than that, man. I really like listening to Fado music. If you get a chance to hear live Fado, man, it's cool, man. You have some food, listen to some good music. It's very emotional, sung from the heart. It's the music that was the music of during the dictatorship of Salazar. I think the most recent dictatorship to end outside of like Cuba. So when there was a form of music, man, people were sad as shit, man, and it's persisted.
Ed, where can people find you on Twitter, also Instagram, which is, I love your Instagram page, by the way, and give us a website to check out.
Oh man, so everything is Ed Latimore. Very easy. My Twitter is at Ed Latimore, EDLATIMORE. My website is edlatimore.com, and my Instagram is Ed Latimore. Everything is all Ed Latimore, and I feel sorry for the guy born after me who wants to get that name, man. I locked it up on every platform.
That's awesome. Ed, what can I say, man? Every time I speak with you, I'm always learning something. You're such a great guy. I love all the stuff that you put out there. I recommend everybody listening to go and check out Ed's social media sites and his blog. Ed, thank you so much for coming on Futures Radio Show today.
Hey, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review on iTunes. You can listen to all of our episodes on futuresradioshow.com, iTunes, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher.